this computer. Bum, bum, bum. It's November 11th. It is time for Paul's Patreon Peeps Professional Development, P3 PD. I'm here. So far, we've got, how many folks does it say we have? What are we up to?
22.
Okay, so we got 22 people. We've got about 30-ish that have RSVP to be live today. I want to tell you that we've got my favorite content. Well, there's so many things, there's so many reasons I'm really excited to share this content with you today. I'm determined to keep it. I never printed it out. Mary, remember how I said I was going to print it out? I didn't. It still says, did you want to send this? So hold on just a second, people. So sorry. HP Laser, Hermione's letter, print. I went to print out my notes after I started letting people into the room and shockingly got distracted by chatting with people. Who knew? I know what would help me a great deal is one of these. If you all wouldn't mind, take a couple deep breaths and think the word here on the inhale and now on the exhale. I'm going to do the same. Here I am and here you are. So I had an assignment my second year of grad school in a class I was taking to develop a workshop that would help some group of leaders. We had 8 weeks to work on the assignment. We could pick we were supposed to have a specific audience in mind, develop a 1-hour workshop that would help them be more effective in their work. And I chose people in the helping professions. I interviewed teachers and nurses, people who work on college campuses, like the field I was about to enter, higher education, and counselors. And I asked them, what would help you be more effective in your work? And by the way, one of my grad school buddies is on the line, Kristen. So I'll have to tell you, this was Rob, I think his name was Rob something, the consulting class that I took my second year. Loved it. Anyway, the assignment was to develop a 1-hour workshop for people for some group, and I chose professional helpers. And I interviewed a bunch of folks, asked them what would help you, and I came up with this really random, big, long list of content. What I noticed is that a lot of the content were things they were actually helping the people they were helping with, but they weren't necessarily applying to themselves. So what I came up with was the acronym GREAT, G.R.E.A.T. And what I'm going to do now is in the chat area, I'm going to paste a link that if you click on it, should open in a browser a PDF document that says GREAT across the top. And I will, if you're watching this as a recording, my intention will be to put this link actually in there. And if it's not there, message me real quick and I'll add it and it'll be there for you and others. It's a simple handout. If you're not able to look at it on your screen, it just has GREAT across the top. And then it has the 5 areas, and I will repeat them a couple times. And then it has a little quote at the bottom. If you're near a printer and you would like to print this out and take notes, awesome. If you just want to soak this in and have this up on your screen, it'll guide you through. So goal setting, role modeling, esteem building, attitude adjusting, time and stress managing. I will tell you more about how this class ended up shaping my career and my life at the end of our time together, either before or after the recording stops, depending on how we do on time. What I'd like to do is to give you the little highlights of these 5 areas, which has evolved. You'll notice here it says 1990 to 2020. So this used to be 75–80% of the presentations I gave in a year, and it's become smaller and smaller as I've developed my repertoire. But the last time I gave this was last year at a program for Procter & Gamble, and I've tweaked it every single time I've given it. The other thing I have for you, especially if you're a visual person, but Also, if you like treats, do you all remember overhead projectors? When I started giving this, we didn't have projectors and computers. We had overheads. If we were doing something, we were printing out overheads. And I didn't really like using overheads in my content. But what I ended up doing is finding an artist whose work I really loved. And I commissioned her to paint me 5 watercolors. And then we developed quotes to correspond to these 5 areas. And I dug up some postcards. Somebody that just joined Patreon sent me a picture of their scrapbook that had these images in it from, I think she said 20 years ago. So now I'm sending you a link to another PDF that I threw on my computer this morning that has these 5 images in order of how we're looking at them. So if you are able to peek at that, you should see this yellow one at the top that says, when we risk going too far, we discover how incredibly far we can go. And what I'd really like to tell you, just high level on goal setting, and if you're thinking of maybe about 2021 and how you might shape the new year differently, this is a good, we used to do this a lot as a new year, new you content. But very quickly, what I want to say about goal setting is I tend to think of it like a big funnel, in that what goes in the top as a daydream or as a New Year's resolution, or so, it would be great to accomplish that, doesn't necessarily come out of the bottom as an achieved goal. But in order for something to come out of the bottom as an achieved goal, it has to go into this process. And at the top, what we want to do is make the top as wide as possible to let in as many possibilities. Dreaming big is what the top level item is. Dream big. And one of the things we're sometimes guilty of is we have a little daydream. Wouldn't it be great if I could do this? And then a little voice in our head says, you're not supposed to want that. You're too old to want that. Or you didn't go to school for the right thing to want that. Or you're a girl, girls aren't supposed to want that. Some little voice tries to take it out of the hopper. And what I think can help people be more effective in their work and in their life is to tell that voice, I'm just at the daydreaming stage right now. It is okay to dream about this. And what that does is it expands the top a little bit more to let more in. Now, just doing that isn't necessarily going to keep more results. But again, if it doesn't go in the top, it's not going to be able to come out the bottom. So part of goal setting is broadening the top of the funnel. And the other thing I want to focus on in my brief time today is the bottom, focusing. And there's some other things in the middle I usually talk about. But if I only had 3 minutes, what I would want to say is enlarge the top to let more in. And then at some point, you've got to focus. A lot of people think my job is the ripples guy, and especially when I'm in keynote training mode, is to come up and tell people you can do anything you want if you just work hard enough, if you just do this, if you just do that. And I think it's my job to say to people, you can't do everything you want, and anything is possible when you're willing up to give the daydream up about having everything. And so being able to focus at some point in the process and saying, it would be awesome to do this and this and this and this, but if I keep all of those things as my focus, I'm not going to get much of anything. So when I'm doing the interactive piece of this, one of the things I often will do is put people in the small groups and have them think about what would it be like if they were better at opening up the top and dreaming bigger, and also being able to focus more. And I would invite you to be thinking about that a little bit. I am going to take a little diversion and ask you and tell you a quick story that I used to tell in the presentation. I'm so excited. When I was growing up, I used to have this dream of being able to fly. I would become an eagle and I could soar over everyone and everything else. And it was so awesome because it gave me a sense of peace and a sense of control that I didn't feel in my waking life. And the only problem is that in my dream, no one believed me that I could fly. And so one of my recurring dreams was waking up, actually sometimes flopping around in bed going, I can fly, I can fly. And one of the catches in my dreams is I didn't think it was a good use of my special gift of being able to fly just to prove people to I did it. So I didn't like just doing it just to show people. But in the moments in my dream when I took off, that feeling of, I knew it, I knew I could do this. You have that feeling about something. You have moments where you have this super confident, I knew I could do this. And the idea of goal setting is about expanding our possibilities, dreaming big enough to where you can believe you can do something for a whole second. And then focus to where you can believe you can do something for a whole minute and make some progress towards doing it. And I don't think it's possible to always be 100% confident that you can do something. There's going to be so many doubts that naturally creep in from within and from other people. But when you can believe that you can do something for more minutes a day than you don't believe it or that you doubt it, that momentum will carry you through the periods of doubt. So that is goal setting. And with that, I'm going to have you move down to the second image. We advance toward our destiny when we encourage others to reach theirs. And very quickly, the R, role modeling. And my definition, and the 2 points I usually make in the workshop was having role models, and in fact, having lots of them, and being a role model. My definition of a role model is somebody who has something I admire, not necessarily everything. They don't have to be perfect. Excuse me, I gotta lower my window. There's somebody skateboarding next door and it's distracting me. Focus, Wesselman, remember the last stop, focus. A role model is somebody who has something that I admire, not everything. They do not have to be, they are not perfect. If the only people I could look up to and the
You're muted.
I don't know what happened. Did one of you shush me? Did one of you shush me? Did I just get shushed? Okay, who knows? I'm back. I apologize. I'm glad I'm unmuted. Mary, did you do that? No, I'm just kidding. So role modeling, having lots of them, they're imperfect. Remember that if the only people that you can look up to are people that are perfect, that puts a lot of pressure on the few of us who are perfect, because then I got to be the role model forever. No, it means we don't get to have people to look up to. It is so important that we think of our role models as having one quality, two qualities, something that we admire. And then the question, and if I ask you to think about somebody right now that you look up to, could be somebody you know, could be a historical figure, a famous person, and really just get specific for a second. Think of a specific person and what quality that you admire in them. And in fact, you know what? We've got a chat area here. Could a couple of you do me a favor? Type the person. It doesn't have to be somebody we know. You can put Joan, and we don't need to know who Joan is exactly. Or you can say my aunt or something, and just tell us, what did you admire or do you admire about that person? What's the quality? What's the trait? Oh, bless you, Mary. You did do it. I get it. I just saw that note. Yes, and if there is somebody with lots of background noise, that's exactly that's the problem. And I appreciate you doing that for people. Lynn's unending hope. My friend Vi, she's so good at relationships. This is good. T-Max, selfless, always has time for people. FDR, despite being loaded, he always thought of the less fortunate. Barack Obama, for being intelligent, thoughtful, and measured. Yes, these are fantastic. Sherry, she sticks to goals, stays positive. The important thing here is for us to think of people we look up to and get specific with what they admire. As some more people are sharing that, let me tell you quickly my grandmother and her craft stages. My grandmother went through a whole bunch of craft stages in her retirement. I didn't. She retired when I was pretty young, so I remember most of her as living up the street from me. She was one of my primary childcare folks. And she had her craft stage. She started with the quilting, and all the grandkids got the quilt. She did the Afghan with some of the color combinations. I'm assuming some of you have these Afghans that are like, why did grandma make those colors? And I swear there's this one that I have that is, those were the colors that were on sale at the Ben Franklin in Murdale, a corner from me, because why? She did ceramic figurines. She did little candles. That year, we each got little candle Santa Clauses. And we're like, are we supposed to burn Santa Claus? I don't understand. One of my grandma's favorite stages that was, as she really advanced into crafting, was wood carving. And she would carve out these amazing carvings that hung on her wall, and a few on our walls itself. And I remember this because when I turned 12, one of my birthday presents from grandma is she took me into her living room and she said I could pick out any wood carving I wanted. I wasn't gonna be able to have it then, but when I grew up and had a home of my own, I could, and I didn't have to think for a second. I went right and I said that one right there. And it was a wood carving of an eagle. And she said, well, Polly, that's my very first wood carving that I ever did. Why did you pick that? Well, what I wanted to tell her was because it reminded me of my dreams of being able to fly over everyone and everything else. But I'm thinking, telling this dream, my grandma's going to be like, you're crazy. So I just said, because it reminds me of you. That was my little fib. But what I remember about all of my grandma's craft stages is that she didn't move on to a new craft stage until she had mastered it, till she got really where she felt she had gotten as good as she had gotten and that there was some mastery. And so the reason I share that story with you, and the reason I want to scan this a little bit more and really focus on the quality, she really knows herself, Jen says about her friend Gloria. Marianne's ability to create and see things that many other don't. My grandmother's bravery. Listen to me. The quality that you admire in someone else is awesome if you admire in somebody else. It has more power when you ask yourself, what am I doing to cultivate courage in myself? What am I doing to create and see things in other people that they don't? What am I doing to know myself a little better? In my case, what am I doing to bring mastery into my life? And that is where role modeling, which is useful for us to admire in other people, we can work on building in ourselves. We advance toward our destiny when we encourage others to reach theirs. And that's the other glorious part of role modeling, as we admire other people and then cultivate those qualities in ourselves, we become a role model for other people who then can ripple it on out, as it were. Although when I created this content, it was years before I started even sending out my ripples. Time keeps going, so I'm going to keep moving. Thank you so much for participating, all of you in there. The E is esteem building. What lies before us is daunting. What lies within us is astounding. Again, this 1 hour workshop that became a 3 hour workshop had a lot more content, and I'm determined, as we talked to some folks last week, to keep this brief so that it's not too overwhelming. I want to focus on two things. With esteem building, being flexible with how you look at yourself to compare to other people, and then being inspired, planting inspiration to lift yourself up. Self-esteem, when I think of esteem building, is a relationship with yourself, how much you trust yourself, how much you respect yourself, and how much you like and love yourself. And it takes a lifetime to get to where you are at today with how much you trust yourself and respect yourself and like yourself and love yourself. And of the 5 that I ended up putting together in this workshop, this is the hardest to affect change in. And I think that's important to notice, that wherever you're at, if you were going to give your self-esteem on a scale of 1 to 100, wherever you're at right now is fine. How can we move it up a little bit? And the 2 I'll focus on is being flexible with how we see ourselves. What tends to happen when we compare ourselves to others is we tend to put ourselves on a continuum about where we think we're at compared to other people. Are we similar to lots of other people, or are we different than other people? And the problem with putting this on a continuum is that at each extreme, for people who are just like everyone else, we have names we tend to call people. They're boring, they're average, they're just like, they're clones. And then people who are at the really far other end, different, they're really weird, they're freaks, oh my gosh. And the problem is then when I ask people which one they tend to lean towards, our options both kind of stink. Well, you can either lean towards being boring, average, normal clone, or you lean towards being a weird, crazy freak. And the reality is, we have two separate and distinct needs. We have a need to stand out and be seen as special, and we have a need to fit in, to belong. And so when you get a piece of information that says you're different than everyone else, instead of saying, oh no, that means I'm not like everyone, that means you're special. That means you stand out. Whenever you get a piece of information that says you're different, yes, it means you're weird. Yes, it means you're weird, and it means you're special. Anytime you get a piece of information that says you're not A++ in something, that you're not a superstar, that's not your super strength, and you're kind of average, good. It's important to have things in common with other people and to normalize your normalcy in some areas. We have a need to be part of the pack. And so an area where you don't stand up, that's great. That's an example of you being average. And that's a good thing in some ways. The other thing is being inspired, is planting inspiration in your life. And we have good days and we have bad days. We have good days and bad days. The good days hopefully get better, and the bad days hopefully get less bad. If you kind of picture the stock market, hopefully they get better, but always in the stock market and in life, there's corrections where something comes out. And one of the ways, and 2020 is like, we'll bleep this out, a shitstorm of for so many ways and so many people. That felt so good to just drop that S-bomb. Oh, it felt good. And the reality is, regardless of how much of a dip this has been for you personally or the people around you, and I don't know exactly when, if it hasn't yet going to start going back up, I'm really confident it's going to go back up. And usually what helps us get going back up is sources of inspiration. For some people, the outcome last week, it was a source of inspiration. Yay. Some people it's not. For some people, the good news that they're hearing maybe from people in their life that got sick, got COVID, or been struggling with something and they're getting better, that lifts us up. We go see the right movie. I just watched, thanks to my peeps on Facebook, somebody, Jamie heard from a colleague or a friend that we should watch Enola Holmes, the movie on Netflix, and also the chess. I can't remember the name of the series on chess. And I put that on Facebook, and all these people went, oh my God, blah, 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 blah. And so we ended up watching the movie Enola Holmes over the weekend. So good, so amazing. She breaks the fourth wall, and afterwards I was like, so good. And we're on the second episode of the chess, Queen's Gambit. Thank you, Stacy. Queen's Gambit, second episode last night. Oh, I'm so in. I just watched a documentary over the lunch hour on Hulu that is about the amazing Jonathan, and it's very weird, and it's actually sad and strange and mysterious, kind of fitting for a magician comedian documentary. But it ended up being more about, I don't want to say too much, it ended up being more about the person making the documentary, and some very unexpected things happened, and it ended up being more about him. And at 5 minutes before it ended, I was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this. And then at the very end, I was like, I know exactly what to do with it. What would lift you up that you can plant purposely in your life? Whether it's a movie, some music that you need to bring into your life, inspirational quotes. You know, this is the point in the presentation when I normally do the Ripples card activity where I hand everyone a little Ripples card. And I'm going to very quickly, how can it be 4:28 already? How is that possible? Somebody stole time from me. If you haven't been to our fun little quote pond, I'm going to quickly put the link in there. Go check out the quote pond and get a little inspirational quote. You just click on that and one of 4,000 quotes will come to you, and that is meant to lift you up today. Attitude adjusting is, I mentioned to you that this quote says, the world is our friend or foe, depending upon how we view it. And what I want to just very quickly say about attitude adjusting is that of the 5, I mentioned that esteem building is the hardest to affect change. Attitude adjusting is the easiest to affect change because we get to choose our attitude. Sometimes we let other people decide what kind of mood we're going to be in, what kind of attitude we're going to have. And that's natural and that's understandable. And my friends, that ain't going to change. Attitude adjusting is remembering that you ultimately get to choose. You don't get to choose what happens to you. You get to choose how to respond. You don't get to choose what you're feeling when something yucky happens. You can choose to step back and say, and become aware of your feelings and say, I'm aware that I'm feeling strong feelings. What can I do to help tend to that, address it, or maybe put it in a little box and set it aside when address it more mindfully. And the other thing I will often tell people in terms of choosing their focus is to be mindful about choosing the people you spend time with. We all have people in our lives that when we're around them, then we feel better. I tell a story about a friend that I went to grad school with. At this point in the workshop, 90% of the time when I bring up, do you have people in your life that you always feel better when you're around? And I swear this is a true story. I almost always bring up my friend Kristen Hentz. We went to grad school together. We spent a year interning at the same school, and we had to drive to Bowling Green from Little Tiffin, Ohio, once a week. And I could laugh so hard with Kristen, no matter how frustrating grad school was, no matter how yucky, we could laugh so hard. And it is 35 years later, no, 40 years, however many years later, 30 years. She's on this call today and she is still in my life. And this weekend I was texting her when I was freaking out and frustrated about some stuff, and she still makes me laugh. There are people in my life that drain me, people I love, people that I don't want to kick out of my life, that suck the life force out of me sometimes. And they're still, because I care about them, because I get lots of other things out of their relationship, I keep them in my life. But I'm very mindful that I need to choose, especially when I'm struggling, who I spend time with. And my offering to you, if you want to have a better attitude tomorrow than you do today, can you spend more minutes with people who infuse energy in your life and spend just even 10 seconds less with people who drain you? And finally, to keep this tight, the time and stress managing piece is actually something that we covered a few months ago in a different presentation. And so I will say that in general, time and stress management is one of the areas that's most fertile to help improve people's ability to be effective in their life. And the thing I would highlight with just a couple minutes left is to say, let me show the quote. To accomplish the remarkable, we must learn to go with the flow. And if I ever reprint these, I will change that to say we must sometimes learn to go with the flow, or we must learn to sometimes go with the flow. Because a lot of people push against this and say, I need to chart my path and go. And sometimes we need to chart our path and go. But if I had to say one thing about time and stress management, it's something that I said to the folks a couple of months ago when we were talking about time and stress management, is that the biggest source of the biggest source of stress in our life is the incongruence between what we say is important to us and what's on our calendar. And if I ask you, who are the most important people in your life? What are the most important activities that fuel you, that help you professionally and personally? And then I ask you to get out your calendar, put up your calendar on a screen and show me where those things are. If they're not there, your calendar is incongruent with what your values, what you're telling me is important. And if you would like to have less stress in your life, can you tweak? Can you put some more things in your calendar that are important to you? And then can you eliminate a couple things that are not important to you to make room for them? That was a lot of territory. Before I turn off the timer and recorder, and some people will need to go, I got to finish telling you a story about my grandmother and her mastery and the wood carving of an eagle, because several years ago, actually in 1991, so shortly after I created this workshop, I was at Beloit College doing my first job out of grad school. And my grandmother had been ailing and was going downhill, and I got the call that my grandma had passed away, and I had to leave Wisconsin, drive the Illinois, a long state, drive all the way down to Carbondale for the memorial service. And the long day we had at grandma's house, cleaning out her house, deciding what we were going to give away, what we were going to keep for each of her grandkids, and my mother, who is an only child. And we were taking wood carvings off the wall, and there was really one that I really wanted, that wood carving of an eagle. And as soon as my big sister went to grab it off the wall, my mom spoke up and said, "That was my mom's very first carving. I have to have that carving." And given that my mother was an only child, this was a super hard day for her. And because she's a kind of a narcissist, I said, yes, my mom needs to have that. No big deal. And my big sister takes it off the wall, and there's a card on the back of that eagle, and it is addressed to me. And so my big sister passes this eagle over to me, and I open up this little tiny card that my grandma has taped to it, and written in grandma handwriting, it says, "Happy 12th birthday, Paul. Here's the eagle you always wanted. With lots of love, Grandma." And at the end of that card, she added, "P.S. Happy flying." And I got to tell you, it was so weird to see that happy. And it was like she knew about my dreams of being able to fly. And in this split second, I realized that there were so many ways that I had a sense of peace and a sense of joy and control in my life that I had always only fantasized about as a child. And that there were actually many ways, going off to grad school, getting a master's degree in an area where I felt like I found my home, being able to come out, identify as gay, and it was okay for me to be who I am, that I was soaring. And the other thing that was kind of cool is that even though I had never told my grandma about those dreams, even though I had not told my grandma a lot about who I was, my grandma knew that I had a dream inside of me, and that she, and to me in that card, was saying, "Go do your thing, Paulie." I do want to go ahead and wrap up this time together by saying this little half hour that I shared with you is sometimes a 5-minute thing and sometimes a half-day thing. I have not given it in the time of COVID. The last time I gave it was March a year ago, and it was such a treat for me to be able to dust off and tell the story. Before I turn off and before some of you have to go, I do want to paste a link, because I found about 30 of these sets of postcards, and I am so excited to say I want to send them, send you a set. So this is what I did. Hold on, let me get this. I want to paste here a little form. I'm hoping this works. Mary, you've heard that story. Oh my gosh, you've heard that story back in the day. That's so amazing. Yes, so I did the right thing. So this is what I've just done, is I've put I put a link to a form in the list. And again, if you're watching this later, go back to the Patreon page. My intention is to put this link here. You fill out this little form. It's got a couple questions. Hey, how was this for you? Is there anything else you want me thinking about for next year's stuff? And you can also pick out a sticker. All the stickers I've done, if it's a Ripple sticker, a Here Now sticker, a We Got This stickers, we did the Be the Ripple that changes the tide, Black Lives Matter sticker. I've got, I think, 6 stickers now that I'm operating with, that I have a few left. So I put a little sticker image in there, and you can pick one. I will mail it to you. And the last thing I want to do is, before I turn off the recorder, because I need to have that recorder on if I want the people who are watching this later. Oh, I didn't paste it. I got some emails this week about this week's ripples, that one of them was just, I'm going through something really profound and hard, and this week's ripple made me sure that I can get through it. And there was actually several, and I had pasted some aside. I'm not seeing it on my screen, that I just wanted to say, my ability to keep rippling this year, in this crazy, awful year, has been boosted so much by a bunch of Patreon peeps who are willing to pitch in a couple bucks. And it has allowed me, all my costs for sending out ripples are completely covered. And as of about 3 weeks ago, you're also covering the cost of my health insurance. And so what is so amazing is I can keep on living on savings and the gigs that are coming in, and some are coming in. And 2021 probably doesn't involve me getting on a plane to go fire up anyone. That's okay, because I got you all. So I just want to end by saying, I am feeling empowered, and I am truly feeling great because of you all. So give yourselves a hand and give me a hand for that one. You're amazing. I'm going to hit stop on this now. Nope. That's the wrong button. I'm going to hit